Hello everyone and welcome to another tactics guide for the Contention server in DCS World, and this time we're covering something really quite important I hadn't really considered until it was asked of me, and that is how do you actually choose what role you do. So far all of my guides have been how to do a specific role, but yeah, how do you choose which one to do for your team? Obviously this once again is going to be something that's going to be different every single time, but I'll give you some of the things that you should be looking at to give you some idea of how you can best help your team win the campaign. Obviously first up, this is largely going to depend on what modules you have available to you. If you've only got logistics helicopters, then you're going to be doing some form of logistics. If you've only got an air superiority fighter, you're going to be doing air superiority. But very often modules do give you a choice, so even with an individual module there is still options. So going back to say a helicopter, then if you've just got say a Huey as your only module, you can still do lots of different things with that. You can still do Caesar, you can do transport operations, you can do CTLD, you can capture points. There's still quite a lot there you can do, so I'll be trying to help break those down, but with all of these recommendations that I'm putting in, do just bear in mind, yeah, it depends on what modules you have. Now the first big choice you have is what team to actually choose, and I'm a big proponent of picking whichever team has fewest players just to help balance the server. I've put out videos in the past of why I think this is a good thing, both for your own enjoyment, the enjoyment of everyone else on the server, and the general health and well-being of the community as a whole. But I know that some people do prefer one side over another, and that is fine, especially if you are wanting to, say, stick with one particular side for an entire campaign. I absolutely get that. You do you. Either way, pick a side is going to be the first choice you're making here. And once again, if you're limited with modules, it may be that you can only fly on one side. That's absolutely fine. That makes this choice really, really easy. I just default to whichever side has the fewest is the one that needs the most help and will be the one that gets the most interesting gameplay. So once you've picked a side, you're in the server, you're ready to go, and you want to decide what plane you want to spawn in, what role you're going to do, where you're going to start from. The main bit of advice here is the best way to find out what your team really needs is just to ask, either over SRS or in the in-game chat. Do ideally make sure you're on team chat and not the global chat there. Just ask people what the team needs the most, what they're lacking the most. You will normally get some kind of response here. Busy times you'll very often get contradictory responses, but at least this will give you an idea. The people who have been playing on the server up until that moment will know if there is a shortage of cap, or they will know if the enemy has a lot of air defense, or equally they will know that a particular strong point really needs to be taken down and could use a specific ground attack mission. Can be really, really useful. It's the kind of thing you'll pick up as you are playing through an individual session, so you might as well just take advantage of the people who are there already, who will already know all of this. Now I know some people don't like using SRS, some people will not get an answer, especially on quieter times you might just not get an answer to this question, and so the rest of this is going to be looking at, well, what can you do to work this out for yourself? And the first thing that you can do is take a look at the campaign status. You can access this through the F10 menu. You can get an update on the campaign there. And in particular, you can look at what your team's resources are like. This can give you a big hint to what is lacking. If your team has a huge number of resources, especially if it's been capped out on the 500,000 max resources, it's a really good indication that your team does not have enough CTLD. You've not been using the resources that you have, in which case it's probably a good idea to take a helicopter out, start putting down some really expensive big ticket items there, like SAM systems. Can be really, really useful. On the exact flip side, if you see that your team is sorely lacking resources, particularly if you're under 100,000 or down to only a couple of tens of thousand, It's a really good indication that your team does not have enough resources, and so then immediately start thinking about ways you can do that. Now, if you're in something like a helicopter, you can certainly do this by repairing factories. If you are in a ground attack plane, you can do this by targeting depots, is probably the best way of gaining resources in a hurry. Can also target enemy ships, will give you a nice big chunk of resources. And if you're just doing cap, do bear in mind that taking out those enemy supply planes does net your team with a nice big bonus as well. All of those can be really, really useful and to help your team, and that will help support your helicopters get down the units that they need. And then perhaps one of the more important things you can check just before you even join the game is you can have a look at the planes that players are currently flying on both sides. And here what you are looking for is both the types of planes that people are playing and the total number of planes that people are playing. If you find that you're on a quieter time of the day when there's maybe sort of at most 10 people per side, getting closer to sort of 5 people per side, that is the ideal time to do some kind of air-to-ground. You're not going to have a lot of fun in air-to-air there, particularly on wider maps, because you're just not going to find anyone. However, on those quieter times when there really isn't much enemy cap up, you can do really, really well in any kind of air-to-ground or CTLD thing because you will largely be left alone. A handful of players doing CAS on these quiet times can really severely push the front. When things start to get busier, you really want to keep an eye on what types of planes are being flown on both sides. In particular, pay attention to what your team's fighter count is compared to the enemy team's fighter count. If you've got a lot more fighters than the enemy do, then you're going to need to fill in the other roles. You're going to need to be doing ground attack or helicopters. In particular, if you don't have many helicopters around, you're probably going to need to be filling in with those CTLD roles. On the other hand, if the enemy have way more air superiority fighters up than you do, then your team is going to be very much lacking in cap. You do see this quite often on Red 4. A lot of people will be in helicopters, whereas Blue 4 will be rather dominant in the cap roles. In those cases, you do probably want to jump on some kind of air superiority fighter. If things seem balanced and you just don't know, then honestly, just pick whatever is fun for you. People spend a lot of time worrying about doing what is best, but the main thing to do is just enjoy the game. As long as you're having fun and enjoying the game, you will be helping your team. So even if your team desperately needs cap, if you hate doing cap, then by all means do ground attack. That's absolutely fine. You'll be doing something for your team. So yeah, those are my kind of thought processes that I go through when trying to decide what to select. And do bear in mind that what you start off with doesn't have to be what you spend the entire session on. It is quite fun having a kind of dedicated session to doing a certain thing, so doing CTLD. But on the other hand, it can be very useful for your team if you can chop and change between different roles as the situation evolves. If you're finding yourself when you're trying to do ground attack repeatedly getting intercepted, it's a really good shout that you should probably be switching to cap. Equally, if you've been doing cap and you've been finding that you've been struggling to find anything, that's really good indication that maybe you need to switch out your ordnance for something to be hitting ground targets. Either way, that is how I think things through, and so if you have any questions about this, please do let me know. Any suggestions about videos, again, please do let me know. I do have quite a backlog that I am trying to work through, but they will be coming. I am reading all the comments, don't worry. And until next time, remember to be kind to yourselves and everyone else. Cheers.